Wallace D. Ford and Wallace D. Fard was the same person. Facts based on information from archived records from the cities of Chicago, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, Los Angeles, California, Portland, Oregon, declassified FBI files and prison records, which include photographs and fingerprints, proves conclusively that Wallace D. Ford and Wallace D. Fard was the same person. All of the information presented here can be examined under the Freedom of Information Act. The United States government monitors a variety of groups and individuals which they consider are not in the best political interests of our country, such as hate groups. Groups and individuals who have a radical agenda are basically political opponents of mainstream America. The Nation of Islam falls under this category. The branch of government that is responsible for gathering information on these groups is known as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In their investigation of the Nation of Islam, the FBI discovered that its founder was a fraud. This is where the counterintelligence program comes in, or simply COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was a series of covert, secret, and often illegal projects conducted by the FBI aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic dissident political opponents of mainstream America. Once the FBI discovered that the Nation of Islam was a fraud, the FBI did everything they could to discredit the Nation of Islam and make them look ridiculous. They inserted informants as members. Some of the informants had high positions in the Nation of Islam. The informants knew all the so-called lessons. They knew the student enrollment, English lessons C1 and C2 verbatim. They knew the so-called secret rituals of the lost-found Nation of Islam and Islam as taught in a mathematical way. The FBI knew more about the Nation of Islam than all of its members. They infiltrated the group. They were like a virus. They did this to gather information. Since the founder was a fraud, then everything he preached was fraudulent also. Therefore, I will not go into what he preached. That is a topic for another video. The FBI pointed out that the Nation of Islam was in fact pseudo-Muslim, rather than a genuinely religious movement, and was just as racialist in its approach as some of the more extreme anti-Negro movements in the South. Researchers discovered in the late 1990s that the founder of the Nation of Islam was named WALI DODD FARD. Within the Nation of Islam, he is commonly referred to as Master Fard Muhammad. The FBI discovered that he used over 58 aliases in his lifetime. I am only going to list just a few of Fard's aliases. They are Wally D. Ford, Wally D. Ford, W.D. Ford, W.D. Fard, Wallace D. Ford, Wallace D. Fard, Wallace Dodd Ford, Wally Dodd Fard, Fred Dodd, David Ford L., Professor Ford, Wally Farad, Wallace Farad Muhammad, and Master Farad Muhammad, with just a slight variation in the spelling of most of his aliases. Fard was whoever he wanted to be at any given time. The FBI's search for Fard's true identity began in the late 1950s due to concerns about the skyrocketing growth of the Nation of Islam after Malcolm X became the organization's national spokesperson. Membership grew rapidly over a 7-year period beginning in 1956. In April of 1957, based on a review of the files on Fard, The Chicago office inspector suggested that an exhaustive effort be made to fully identify and locate Wallace D. Fard and/or members of his family. When the Bureau conducted a search on Fard's various aliases, they submitted Ford based on a reference in a 1937 study of the Nation of Islam titled The Voodoo Cult Among Negro Migrants in Detroit by sociologist Erdman D. Beynon, who listed Professor Ford as an alias of Wallace D. Fard based on interviews Beynon conducted with NOI members who said that Fard was referred to at various times as Mr. WallaceFard, Mr. Farad Muhammad, and Professor Ford, among other names. The FBI's search turned up 2 Wallace Fords. After searching records in early 1957, the FBI found a Wallace Ford born February 12, 1898 in Bolton, England. He entered the United States at San Pedro, California on July 25, 1937, having resided in London, England. This was not their man, however, as a 1957 November 29th memo confirmed. Quote, "It would appear the above individual is the former prominent movie actor." End quote. This was not their man, because he did not arrive here in the United States until 1937, long after W.D. Fard had disappeared. Another Wallace Ford of California came up in the search. He was Wally D. Ford, arrested by Los Angeles Police Department, their number 16448, as Wally Ford on November 17, 1918, on a charge of assault with a deadly weapon. Again by the Los Angeles Police Department, January 20, 1926, for the possession of illegal drugs. And again by the Los Angeles Police Department, February 15, 1926, for violation of the State Poison Act, possession of narcotics. Wally Ford served 3 years at San Quentin Penitentiary from June 12, 1926 to May 27, 1929. The FBI concentrated its efforts for the next year on finding Wally Ford. On October 14, 1957, 3 San Quentin photos of Wally D. Ford, ID number 42314, taken in June of 1926, were forwarded to the FBI. At this time during their investigation, the FBI said in a file dated October 3, 1957, that W.D. Fard may be identical with one Wally D. Ford, FBI number 56062, who was arrested on February 15, 1926 by the Los Angeles Police Department. Later in their investigation, the FBI contacted the Detroit Police Department and received the May 1933 mugshot of WallaceFard when he was arrested there for conversion. The Detroit mugshot of Farad matched the San Quentin prison photos and the Los Angeles police photos of Wallace Ford. From the prison records of Wallace D. Ford, the FBI learned that Ford had a common-law wife named Hazel Barton Ford, who wrote to him on occasions while he was in prison. WallaceFard's hidden past began to unravel when the FBI located and interviewed Hazel Barton Ford on October 17, 1957. She described Wally D. Ford as a New Zealander. She said his exact age was unknown. He was about 5 feet 8 inches in height, weighing about 140 pounds. He had a slender build, black hair, black eyes, with Caucasian features, but an extremely swarthy complexion. She said he had the appearance of a very dark-skinned Mexican.